So I'd like to call this a regular meeting of council to order for Monday, May 13th, and recognize that we are gathered and governing on the unceded traditional territory of the Pentlatch, Aixen, and Comox peoples, the traditional keepers of this land since time immemorial. And could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. And adoption of the regular council meetings, April 22nd, and committee of the whole, April 29th.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? And receipt of the Heritage Committee minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Receipt, sorry.
And all in favor? Thank you. And we have a delegation from the Sid Williams Theatre. Come on up. And you're welcome to sit or stand or have both of
stand
you
and hang
or
on to the
whatever you'd like to do.
podium.
Just make sure your mic is on so the
I had a
good
I had
people
a-
at home can
my
hear
first
us.
vertigo incident about 10 days ago, and I'm still, if I'm a little wobbly, it wasn't that I was down,
Yeah, you
down
can
the
just
street.
hold on to the side there.
So good. Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Richard Clark, and I have the privilege of chairing the Sid Williams Theatre Society Board of Directors. I'm here this afternoon with Deb Renz, our wonderful general manager, and we are pleased to be here. We previously shared with you an electronic version of our new 3-year strategic plan, and we've given you hard copies this afternoon. I wanted to start with our society's mission. We agreed, a combination of our board of directors and with our wonderful staff, that the SID should lead in the provision of professional theater services for artistic and cultural groups and the wider community, and to offer a full range of theatrical experiences suitable for diverse audiences. Our board, staff, our society members, and our volunteers are dedicated to realizing that mission on an ongoing basis. We identified 4 key primary goals. 1, being the Valley's main stage. Secondly, being a vibrant and sustainable organization. Thirdly, enhancing our team's capacity. And fourth, improving the theater's infrastructure. We're nearing the end of the first year of that 3-year plan, and we are making progress to those goals. Although the theater is physically located in the former Bickle Theater in Courtenay, a City of Courtenay-owned building, we serve the entire valley. Our board reflects that, with members who reside across the valley from Union Bay, Comox, Courtenay, and this fall, former Cumberland Mayor Leslie Baird joined our board. So we represent the whole community. Our agreement with Courtenay stipulates that the city is responsible for the infrastructure and exterior maintenance of the building. Our society is responsible for the equipment, furnishings, operating costs directly associated with using the building as a performance space, providing a multitude of services to the Comox Valley public. Financially, our goal is to cover at least 60% of our current $1.5 million operating budget from earned revenue. That is from rental fees, our own performance series, sponsorship, member society fees, ticket handling, concession sales, and other ancillary revenues. The other 40% comes from funded revenue, including a City of Courtenay management fee, federal and provincial grants, and local municipal government support. Currently, we get financial support from the 3 CVRD electoral districts, the town of Comox, and some additional program support from Courtenay. And we are hopeful that the village can join in. A critical part of our mandate is to make our performance facilities available to the local community, performance groups, educational institutions, community organizations as affordable as possible. By doing so, we enable those groups to support and grow our performance arts community, ensuring the vibrancy and cultural vitality of our valley. We are especially focused on engaging our youth. Each year, close to 3,000 young people have an opportunity to perform and experience the performing arts in real time on our stage. This is community dance season at the SID. Last week it was the Pantuzo Groove. This week it is Pink Thursday on Thursday. In 2 weeks it's the Dance Explosion. And at the end of the month, Triple Heat with 2 more groups in June. Hundreds of young people sharing the limelight on our theater's stage. Who knows when the next Kim Cattrall, Pamela Anderson, Sarah Hagan, or Gig Morton will have a start to their artistic career here in the Comox Valley. By ensuring the affordability of the SID, our society can help make such opportunities a reality. The annual municipal grants help that happen. Now, as you will, I'm sure, appreciate, our costs coming out of COVID have all increased. We've already increased our rental rates and our ticket prices to help maintain that 60% earned revenue ratio, but we do also need an increase in the non-earned revenue to keep pace with increased costs. So we are approaching all levels of government, including each local government, to request a little more support. The response to date, I'm happy to say, has been positive. We are able to track to some extent in which communities our patrons reside. Cumberland residents pretty consistently make up 5% of our audience and our performance users. So approximately 2,000 Cumberland folks come through our doors every year, but of course more would be welcome. We collaborate with and support a wide range of organizations across the valley. One way is by donating SID-sponsored event tickets to various fundraising efforts, including, for example, those of the Cumberland Community Forest Society and the Cumberland Community School. We live in a community absolutely teeming with talented performing artists. The SID is but one of many venues, each with an important role to play. The Waverly, the Weird Church, and the Abbey Studio, for example, here in Cumberland. The population of Comox Valley is growing and becoming more diverse. Our board and management team are working hard to ensure that we are able to continue to provide meaningful and impactful programming going forward. And while the SID, with its 500 seating capacity, absolutely amazing technicians, box office support, etc., is the right place for many performances and events, we've identified in our strategic plan a need expressed by many groups in the valley, the creation of a smaller theater to our community's performance space. We have our work cut out for us. Finally, let me just say that thanks to our incredible staff, the foresight of previous boards, and government support, we survived COVID. Our patrons are back, our volunteers are back, and we are in the black, looking forward to the future. Thank you for this time, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Richard. That was awesome. Questions, comments, council?
Just a quick comment. Thanks very much for the presentation. I love the theater. I've been there at least 4 times this year already.
Great.
Yeah, it is a real jewel in the community. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again, Richard. Yeah, I think it's wonderful to have Sid Williams Theatre and all the performers and all the acts that come through there. I think for Cumberland, you know, the arts are really important, but we've really struggled to support them. And in fact, on our agenda today, we are likely to push back our recreation and arts master plan another year. We just, you know, we have so many priorities, and even though the arts are valued, they just get pushed down the list all the time. So it is a real struggle for us to fund the arts, which I think is a real shame, but it's just the reality of our situation.
Okay, thank you for that comment.
Anybody else?
Just on the converse side of that, I remember using a few years back the Sid Williams as the theater for one of the largest conferences we had in the Comox Valley, the MISA IT conference there, and without the use of the Sid Williams, it would have been challenging to have. So to have that venue available to us as broader convention centers, given that we lack one for the most part, it's such a valuable resource. So thank you for your.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I'd also like to just thank you, Councillor. Did you want to say something
I was
first?
just curious, the Tide Mark, I really like how they let you take the drinks into the theater. Have you guys thought about maybe loosening that up?
We're working on that. Deb, come on.
I was writing something down, so I
Just that I appreciate for the Tide Mark, you're allowed to take your beverages into the theater, and I would imagine that would maybe.
Heck yes. So we're in about a third of the way along in a licensing change for the theater to allow exactly that. Two reasons. Number one, it's probably the number one request from patrons. And the second reason is, of course, we're hoping it will increase our lounge revenue, which is important. It's a reasonable source of income for the theater. But also our security provider of many years has said that actually the track record on letting patrons take their drinks into the theater actually reduces security incidents as opposed to the other way around. Because right now what happens is they're slamming the
Sneaking,
drinks,
yeah.
right? And that's not a good thing. So yeah, we're really hoping, don't publish this in the newspaper yet, but we're really hoping that that service would start in September. So yeah, good question.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, and I really appreciate, I've noticed a shift in programming as well, and much more diverse programming along with the community programming, and the opportunity for the kids, the dance and all of that to happen as well. So super appreciate that. It would be valuable for you guys to participate in our arts and culture planning process when we do it. I think
We
it's
did go to the open house when it was, whenever that was, 2 years ago in
Yeah.
the middle of COVID or
Yeah,
something?
so we did like a start. We had our recreation and arts and culture together, and we decided that we needed to separate that
Sure.
to give arts and culture its just.
Very visionary because not all
Consideration.
municipalities do that, and that I believe is the right thing.
We have a
Sorry.
very strong community of arts and culture people here, and they identified that for us and helped us find a way to do it in a better way. So we'll continue to work with them, and I think we're moving it to 2027, 6.
2025 is the Arts and Culture Master Plan.
2025.
Forecasting 2026 for the facility side.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah, but we'd
both
be happy to
those.
participate.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming.
All right,
And
thank
thanks
you.
for all you
Thanks for
do.
the time.
Yeah.
This is the most fun one we've done so far.
That's what we hear. Thank you.
Thanks, have a good night.
So there's a recommendation there just to receive that delegation.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you, and all in favor. Troy's in favor too, he's just not here. And the housing needs report. Are we zooming people as well for this? Zoom land and in-person land. Hello, Karen.
Okay, while we wait, there's Andrew appears on the screen. I'll just introduce the report. So this report introduces the housing needs assessment that was completed by Andrew Scanlon-Dickey and his team with Turner Drake and Partners, and he'll present on that in a minute. Really, I'll leave up to him to present the key statistics that are important for you to know. From my end, I want to just point out that the requirements for housing needs report have recently changed. So we completed one in 2020, which used 2016 data, by the way, so it is quite out of date. So this recent one uses 2021 data. Back then, the population projections and housing needs were required to be assessed for up to 5 years, and now it's 20 years with recent provincial changes. So we will use the data as part of the official community plan review, and have already integrated that into the growth scenarios that we've been working on, and you will see that at the upcoming open houses next week, where the growth scenarios have to meet the housing need identified. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Thanks. Hi,
All
Andrew.
right, excellent. Hi. I realized that when we were doing the mic check, I might not have had my mic down. So I just want to make sure no one's ears are popping with me talking right now.
You're good.
Okay, excellent. I'm just going to share my screen quick. And all's working on your end? Excellent. All right, so thank you, Karen. So just to reiterate, my name is Andrew Scanlon-Dickey. I am the manager of our planning division here at Turner Drake and Partners. And we've had the pleasure to be working with Karen on this iteration of the Housing Needs Report. Just to repeat as context, so we are waiting for final guidance from the province in terms of a couple last minute items, particularly related to calculations regarding unit demand. So while the numbers here are basically finalized, there may be some slight changes that you see in the final report. However, we are quite confident that the way that we've approached this is quite similar to what the province is going to be asking for, based off of rumblings that we've heard through some contacts. So just wanted to put that context out there before we start. But that said, if you have any questions about that process, I'll welcome those questions at the end of the presentation. To give it a little bit of background, Karen already alluded to it already, but in 2020, so the CVRD produced housing needs reports for each of the regional district's communities, which included obviously the village of Cumberland. Turner Drake also had the pleasure of being part of the team that produced these reports. And so we at Turner Drake, we specialize more on the data side. And so we had the responsibility of leading that data collection, analysis, and reporting portion of the work. And so a lot of things have changed. The market has changed quite considerably. We've had a pandemic, we have new data. And so in 2023, Turner Drake was hired to perform an update to the data work for the village of Cumberland. So as I mentioned, the market has changed quite considerably. And this isn't only for the village of Cumberland, but also for many communities across Canada. And so how has it changed? Well, if we're looking at home ownership, what we've seen for Cumberland in particular is that it's experienced actually quite sustained housing price appreciation since 2016. So this means that there's been increases occurring before, during, and after the pandemic, or the worst parts of the pandemic. What's notable about this is that a lot of communities, even in BC, a lot of their price appreciation occurred in 2019. So at the onset of the pandemic, or 2020, around that period. So that's when the spikes really hit. But for Cumberland, to illustrate, prices rose 54% from 2016 to 2019 and 58% from 2019 to 2022. So there's been a pretty regular, consistent growth occurring in the community in terms of prices. And it's not only like a certain type of dwelling. So the chart that you see below shows the increase in price across different structural types or dwelling types. So be it a single detached home, a row house or townhouse, or a semi-detached home, all of them have been experiencing that increase. But when we're looking at prices, this doesn't necessarily illustrate affordability. If we've had increases in income at the same time, then those increased prices might actually still be affordable. So one way that we try to show this difference is to estimate what the affordable price would be for an income in a given year using a set of mortgage assumptions. And so we have annual income data for different family types, being couple families, lone parent families, and what's deemed or what's dubbed as non-census families. Non-census families include single-person households and roommate situations. And so what we see displayed by the chart below is that the relationship between the median home price that we compare to these affordable prices, this relationship hasn't changed much between 2012 and 2016. So what we see is that couples at this point are the only ones really who are able to afford that median sale price, which makes sense in many circumstances, often dual income earning households, and so they have more income to put towards shelter, whereas lone parent, single person households with single incomes are more likely to rent. But from 2016 onwards, with that appreciation in price, which you see with the blue line, that gap begins to widen further and further away from those single income households, as well as those couple households. So local homes in the village of Cumberland, but also many other communities, it's just becoming more and more out of reach for many more segments of the population. When it comes to renting, unfortunately, we don't have very detailed information for the village of Cumberland. However, there is a good portion of information provided by CMHC for what's considered, what's known as the Courtenay Census Agglomeration. The Courtenay CA does technically include the village of Cumberland within its boundaries, as well as Courtenay and Comox, but the data that comes from Cumberland is quite limited. But nevertheless, what we see in that data is that vacancy rates remain quite low. And they've remained quite low since 2013. And by low, we mean that it is below the 3 to 5% range, which is deemed healthy for a rental market, meaning 3 to 5% of the rental inventory is available at any given time. And by it being lower than this amount, so we see here in the chart below, it's been lower than the gray horizontal box or rectangle across the board for most units since 2013. And what this means is that there's an imbalance of power between landlords and tenants, more so that landlords have increased ability to rent for more. So if a unit becomes vacant, they can charge more for it, or if there's a new unit that's built, that unit starts at a much higher price. And so what we're seeing then across the Courtenay CA is that rents are demonstrating considerable increases, in particular in recent years. And to reiterate, while reported rents are for the Courtenay CA overall, the health of this major center does have a direct impact on the neighboring communities. So, as for instance, as falling vacancies, with falling vacancies, it means households need to find alternatives elsewhere. So if there's reduced opportunity within the city of Courtenay to rent, that means they're moving to the periphery, which includes the village of Cumberland, which means that in the village of Cumberland, the rental stock becomes more and more taken up, and which can relate to increase in prices. To illustrate just the increase in price that's occurred in the overall market over the last 4 or so years, the table below shows that the median apartment increased from $959 in 2019 to $1,450 in 2023. So a considerable increase, about 51%. An important topic in most communities, and so we like to bring it up. And while we don't understand the exact relationship between short-term rentals and the market in terms of prices, it is an important element for communities to understand, more so related to how much of the stock is being taken up by these rentals, and is that stock being truly taken up, or is it more so being used as kind of like a secondary use? So what we're seeing for the village of Cumberland is that short-term rentals are continuing to grow overall, and so too have the estimates of total commercial short-term rentals. We consider commercial short-term rentals, at least as part of our analysis, to be those rentals that are used for short-term rentals for more than half of a year or a calendar year, indicating that the intention is to use that more so for short-term rental revenue rather than as a permanent residence. And so in 2022, there was approximately 69 commercial rentals across the village, making up about 50% of Cumberland's short-term rentals overall at that time. So when we're working on housing needs reports, a big focus of them is the demand side of the equation. This is more so because answering those questions related to demand and producing projections related to population and households is much more attainable across the board for most communities. And so that's why the legislation requires that we report on these variables. And so I'll go over a couple of them over the next few slides. If you've had a chance to read through the report, there's some other elements in there as well that you might have some questions about, and so I'm open to those as well. So for population, in 2023, the province estimated that Cumberland's total population was 4,900 people. This is up 4% from 2021 and 25% since 2016. Based on provincially produced projections for Cumberland, it may be that the community grows to 7,390 by 2043, or over the next 2 decades. This is equivalent to a 51% increase in people, or 2,490 new persons living in the community. As population rises, so too will households. And so in 2023, the estimated total households or estimated household total was 1,940. This was up 5% from 2021 and 24% since 2016. Provincially produced projections suggest that the total may grow to 2,990 by 2043, an increase of 54%, and about 1,050 new households. So much of this change is coming from regional trends, and that is that recent and anticipated regional growth has largely been driven by considerable interest from the outside the CVRD to move to the CVRD, and this includes the Village of Cumberland. More than enough, actually, to counterbalance natural population losses. So what we see across Canada is that we have aging populations and declining birth rates. And so what that means is on an annual basis, there are generally more deaths than births across most communities. And so when we see increases in population or increases in household, usually that is related to inflows of people from other parts of the province, from other provinces, or from international locations. And so the chart you see below is showing inflows of people from other parts of the world. And these are represented by the bright colors. So you have the green, the orange, and the red. And notably since 2013, 2014, it has been pretty large inflow volumes of people, particularly from other parts of the province and as well from other parts of Canada, and a little less so from international sources. The dark blue segment, what that is representing is the net change in population based off of whether there's been more deaths than births or more births than deaths. So negative number would be that there's a loss in that instance. So what you can see is that inflows of people is vastly outnumbering the outflows from, I guess, mortality rates. So higher shares of this in-migration are directed towards the municipalities. It's where there's the most services, most programs, and so included in that is the Village of Cumberland. But it is important to always iterate that all CVRD communities are deeply connected, and so a household's location choice is often not specific to one community or specific to an amenity being present. So someone could live in Cumberland, work in Courtenay, or vice versa. What is interesting to note, though, and this was in particular for the Village of Cumberland, is that the historical population and household age cohort data is indicating growth among 0 to 14, 15 to 24, and 25 to 44-year-olds, suggesting that local increases are largely driven by expanding families, or rather that those inflows of people are younger family-aged folks. And this trend is anticipated to be mirrored in the future via population and household projections. So we understand population is increasing, we understand that households are increasing, and so by that relationship, or kind of the extension of the relationship, that means we should have an increase in unit demand. And so we will. But how much that is, well, we'll talk about in an instant. But before we talk about the future, it is important to also understand where we sit now, or what deficits we might have had based on the past, particularly when it comes to affordable housing. So using the logic and methodology from the UBC's Housing Assessment Resource Tool, commonly known as HART, in 2021, there was an estimated 155 households across the Village of Cumberland that required some degree of non-market housing or program intervention. Of those, there was about 80 who were one-person households, and 30 who were two-person households, as well as 30 who were three-person households. So for the most part, those folks who are experiencing the most need are the smallest households, and are often those who are single incomes. Yes. So we understand where we, I guess, stand currently in terms of non-market housing, but where might we go from now into the future in terms of market housing? Well, new dwelling demand calculations suggest that there may be 455 dwelling units demanded from 2023 to 2028. This actually includes the affordable housing deficits from the previous slide, and this is across Cumberland. And so we see that over time, so 2028 to 2033 to 2038 to 2043, total new demand is anticipated to increase, reaching potentially 1,210 by 2043. What is required, though, as part of our housing needs reporting is not only reporting on the total unit demand or the total units demanded, but also how they distribute in terms of their sizes. And by size, we mean the number of bedrooms within a dwelling. And so our calculations related to this suggest that about 47% of future demand could be for studio or one-bedroom dwellings over the next 2 decades. This is largely due to affordability issues as well as decreasing household sizes. So these two elements are what skew demand towards those smaller dwellings. But nonetheless, there could still be sustained demand for 4+ bedroom units. Obviously, there's more families coming in. So over the next 2 decades, about 21% of new dwellings could be for those 4+ bedroom units, whereas the remainder would be for 2 bedrooms and 3 bedroom units. So if we're trying to, or just for illustration's sake, if you look at the table below, this is providing what those potential distributions could be in each given year. So if we look at 2043, we understand that we might reach a demand of 1,210 units. This means that there could be a demand for 565 studio and 1-bedroom units, 265 2-bedroom units, 135 3-bedroom units, and 250 4+ bedroom units. So major takeaways from this work, or kind of a brief overview of the work and what we've noticed. Well, the most obvious is prices are increasing. And so while the increase can largely be attributed to local supply and demand dynamics, a notable portion is also due to factors outside your community's control. So if you're looking at interest rates, we had a pandemic, you're looking at inflation, all these things you can't as a municipality truly prepare for. But what is within your control, for the most part, is your capacity to be flexible in the provision of several forms of housing. And so allowing broad forms of housing typologies increases opportunities for the market to add inventory, which helps to slow down those price pressures. But in recognition of this, it is important to recognize as well that regardless of how much is built, most of what is built is going to be on the market side. So there needs to be a continued effort to provide for those that can afford that market housing. So to provide non-market interventions over time and in a sustained way. The last thing here, and I don't have it mentioned here, but I've mentioned it in previous presentations as well, is that related to that connectivity between communities of the CVRD, and while housing is a very local thing, and in many regards, a lot of communities can kind of tackle the problem in a singular way. Because there's such a connection between the communities of the CVRD, tackling housing in many ways is a regional approach as well. And so making sure that there's communication between each of the municipalities as well as the CVRD is an important kind of step forward and relationship to keep going as I guess you all are trying to meet this kind of wave of housing demand coming in over the next few, I guess, 2 decades, as the province requires us to report on. So with that, I thank you for your time. Hopefully I wasn't talking too loud or the mic wasn't too loud, but I open the floor to any questions.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Councillor Sullivan and then Barecki.
Hey, thanks for that report. I'm just curious where and how these projections come from the government.
Yeah, so the projections for population and households, they come straight from the BC government. It's known as the People projection methodology, and for the life of me, I always forget the exact, I guess, exactly what people stands for. But effectively, what it does is it uses assumptions related to migration rates, birth rates, and mortality rates, and uses these inputs to determine on an annual basis what the population may be at a provincial, regional, and local scale. So those were made public, I believe, at the end of last summer. So that's a relatively new thing that communities are able to use now. And they do get updated, I do believe, on a semi-annual basis, because the most recent update occurred in February or late January.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Berkey.
Mine was just a point of clarification as far as table 6.3.1. So when you're looking at the net new demand, so 2028 was 455, then 760. That's not year over year. That's from the current year. Is that correct? So that's
yes, exactly. That's net from 2023. So it's not, let's say the 1,210. That's not what you need over the 5 years. That's what you need over the 20 years.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Tyrion.
Just more comments than questions. On page 33, down the table, figure 3.5, the income distribution of total households. It shows in 2016 that 11% of households in Cumberland made less than $20,000. And now in 2021, there's only 2% of households making that amount of money here. And you attribute some of that to the CERB program, but I would suggest that those people are actually just gone. That we've lost these community members because we haven't been able to supply the affordable housing we need. And yeah, we've just lost these community members. It's a similar thing happening on page 44. Where did that one go? Sorry, I'm flipping back and forth on my tables here. Where it showed a decrease in core housing need. And again, I think this decrease in core housing need is because these people are just no longer housed here. We've, again, lost these community members. And still we have 25% of our renters in town experiencing core housing need. So for me, what this report is showing is that we desperately need more affordable housing here in the village. So to that point, it shows that we're at a 155 unit deficit on affordable housing. And then, I've lost, where did it go? Page 51. It shows that by 2043 we need an additional 215 units of affordable housing. But that number doesn't capture the 155 deficit that we're already showing, or I'm confused by this table.
If you could give me the table number.
6-7.
I believe 6?
6-7.
6-7. Okay, perfect.
Showing non-market housing demand.
Right.
And it's showing like for 2028 that the net demand is only 60 additional units, but we're already at 155 deficit, so I'm a bit confused by that number.
Right. Let me look at this just very briefly here. Yes, so this would be the makeup of, so if you're looking at the projections, we have it made up of two elements. So you'd be made up of that 155 unit deficit, as well as the future anticipated new units that we would have in a community. So this section here would take into consideration not the non-market that exists or the non-market need that exists as of 2021, but in the future, based off of the distribution of incomes or historical distribution of incomes, how much of the net new demand since 2023 could be from households that earn low income or less. And those individuals or households are those who are most likely to be in need of a non-market intervention of different forms, whether it's simply like rent supplements or affordable housing or more emergency sort of services. So that would be in addition. I can add clarity about that.
Okay, so then when we get to the next tables, 6-8 and 6-9, those numbers then are included in the
Yes.
120. So of the 120 units that on top of the 155, or sorry, of the 120 units we already needed in 2020. Sorry, hang on. Let me check my numbers here. Of the 455 units, 60 of those should be non-market, plus the
Yes,
155
yes.
deficit we've already got.
Yes, that would be the logic there. And based off of your questions, I will make sure I readjust that narrative a little better to make sure it's clear.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, that's what I've got. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Cutler, do you?
I don't know what to say that's not super depressing, because this report is super depressing. You know, I think it's not too much different as far as the type of units that we need from the last report, but the affordability, you know, to see it, the gap increase so much again is just heartbreaking. You can say, oh well, you know, not everybody needs to own a home, but then you turn to the rental market and there's nothing there. So
Nobody can afford that.
and even if you could find something, it costs you as much as a mortgage would cost. So I don't know what people are doing, and it really is heartbreaking. I know that there's a lot of precariously housed people in Cumberland now. You know, I can walk around my neighborhood and see people living on the edges of it in their vehicles, and yeah, it's just so terrible. We've tried as a council to help the situation. You know, one of the things is allowing the building on Dunsmuir that had all the micro units, and we thought, okay, well, there's, you know, going to be at least place for singles that would be somewhat affordable, but you know, I don't know how quote affordable those are even, and they all filled up right away, and you know, we are trying to increase density in our core, you know, doing all the right things that way. We've been trying for many years to come up with an affordable housing project, Roxidas, and we've had the land and it's been shovel ready, and we've had the nonprofit ready to go for many years, and so many funding cycles have gone by where we've talked to BC Housing and it looks like it's going to go through and it never goes through, and Courtney keeps getting the funding, which, you know, is understandable that they're trying to address Courtney's issues, but it really does leave us in a terrible spot. We just can't help, you know, the citizens of Cumberland, and then there's all these factors, like you said, that are beyond local government control. So yeah, it's not a good situation, and it's very hard, you know, as a counselor to continually see it get worse.
Thank you. So, yeah, thanks so much, Andrew, for this work. It is really hard for us to see the numbers continue to just get worse, and to see us obviously losing a whole section of a whole demographic out of our community. So there's a few places in the beginning of the report that speak to the continued growth of seniors. So historically, the highest rates of growth have largely been among senior-led households, yada, yada, yada. I just want to clarify in this report that that's not specific to Cumberland, that our needs are very much family-sized dwellings.
Yes, you are right. So senior growth is not specific to Cumberland. That's happening across the board.
Yeah.
However, what is notable for Cumberland, and to a degree the CVRD, but led by Cumberland, I would say, is that growth among families.
Yeah.
In many communities, what you're seeing is that their growth is sustained by senior population growth. Like that, every other cohort, you'll see a decrease. In BC, it's a little less so, but Cumberland, based off our experience, it's one of those areas where the increase, and not only in over the last census between 21 and 2016, but if I remember correctly, it was also from 2011 to 2016 as well. So it's not just a recent trend, but folks of that age are choosing, or when they can, to live in Cumberland.
Yeah, so just noting that the need is going to be for multi-bedroom units if we want to continue to grow that population growth. But I also, when I'm looking at this report, am reminded that part of the benefit of having a report like this is to see where the gaps are in our housing needs. So so the fact that we've lost a bunch of people who can't afford means obviously we need affordable housing. The fact that we're attracting a lot of families is great, but we also want to keep seniors here, and they might want to downsize, so we need to figure out how to move them into affordable seniors housing so that they can free up their large houses for families and all of that. So that I think is the continued work of analysis for us and in-house and for us as council, because what we build also attracts what we want, right? The people don't come before the house is here. They come once the house is here. They can't come before that. I mean, they do. Let's be honest. They do come before that. But just noting that we also want to build for bringing back those people we lost and retaining seniors versus them having to move to Courtenay for specialized seniors housing.
I just wanted to ask about this. How much did the report take into account what we have is quite a seasonal community? Tree planters specifically have been a large portion of Cumberland's transient population. Was there any specifics you would look at, or how they account for the demographics of that?
The non-census families?
The non-census families. I mean, that seems like a very large gray area within there.
That is a massive gray area, I will admit. So the non-census families, there is a potential that during the last census collection that they would have been collected as part of that group. I mean, they could have also been collected as couples with children or couples without children, depending on what their household situation was when they were living in Cumberland. That said, the biggest reason for the gap is depending on where they were living at the time. So if there was any kind of, employment provided shelter, or if they were potentially living in tents, like they wouldn't be collected by the census in that sense. So what I would say is that the report underscores or uses the data that is available and reflects the more permanent population. So if you're looking at housing those more seasonal populations as well, this is treated as kind of like that minimum target.
Okay.
And that's also potentially where those conversations about short-term rentals come in, because those would be kind of, I guess, that intended accommodation for short periods, not necessarily for permanent residents.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, thank you. I just thought I'd highlight that.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah. My other question is around it's frustrating that we don't have good data on our rental situation, and I that's a CMHC thing, as the report states. But without that knowledge, how do we know how many rentals we need to build? Like, is there another way to get that information without, without a whole lot of labor?
Yes, there is. It's more of a, it's not like an exact science, and it won't give you the exact number, but with the census, we understand what percentage of households as they exist are renting. Off the top of my head, let's see here. So in Cumberland, about 26% of your households were renting as of 2016, which increased to 28% in 2021. So using those numbers, you could apply a ratio or some sort of other calculations to estimate what that might be in the future. The province doesn't ask for that, and I can understand why they wouldn't. And if it's something you would like me to include as like a section just as discussion, I'm more than happy to. But the reason being is that, or at least this is what I assume based on my conversations with some colleagues who have worked with the BC government, is that oftentimes the rental market or homeownership market, the decision of whether to build one or the other is a very market-driven thing. And so saying to build a certain amount of rentals or a certain amount of owned properties might not necessarily translate in practice, because the market will build what the market wants. So if you're looking at those rental properties, perhaps the most useful way or the most effective way is to, and I know I've heard from you already here that it's very difficult to provide affordable housing, but those affordable rental units that are very much specific to that segment.
Yeah. I was thinking more about like zoning for rental, so that we're incentivizing that. But I guess that's a future conversation for our OCP. Any other questions?
Just one quick one for staff. Did we build 120 units last year? That was the 2023 number from the report, and I'm just wondering if we came anywhere near that. I know the two buildings here on Dunsmuir came in, and a few and some others, but I was wondering if we're anywhere near that 120 units.
The statistics we track are building permits issued.
Yep.
So that could even be a year before the building is occupied. And it was definitely under that. And I have to look up the exact number for 2023.
Okay.
I think it was even less than 40 units, so quite a bit under.
So we're already in a deficit as we move forward.
Because the market does what the market does.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, thank you so much, Andrew. If there's no more questions, we can let you go. Thanks for your work on this, and thanks for taking our questions. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too. So there's a recommendation there to
Move receipt.
accept. Yeah, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? And that is also carried. So now we're on to Community Heritage Register additions.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For those I haven't met yet, it's nice to be here tonight, and
Hello.
thank you.
Welcome.
So the purpose of this report is to present an updated statement of significance for the Coal Creek Historic Park, which is currently in the Community Heritage Register, in addition to presenting Council with 4 new sites, also each documented with a statement, to add to the Community Heritage Register. These sites are the 00 Survey Benchmark, the Bevan Houses, 2719 Dunsmuir Avenue, and the Wellington Colliery Railway. So I'll do a brief just kind of overview of each site, but there is a full statement for each site also attached to the report. So for the Coal Creek Heritage Park, it's a 40 hectare park and cultural landscape, currently recognized as a provincial heritage site under Section 18 of the BC Heritage Conservation Act. The park, located in the wetlands east of Village of Cumberland and just south of Comox Lake Road, contains the sites of Cumberland's former Chinatown, number 1 Japanese Town, portions of the historic Wellington Colliery Railway Trail, the former number 1 mine site, and the number 2 mine portal site. The 00 survey benchmark is a historic survey, a small iron puck embedded in a sunken concrete pillar. The benchmark permanently marks the starting point on the ground for the original mapping system of approximately 130 mining boreholes, and it is located in the southeast edge of Village Park in Cumberland. The Bevan Houses are a group of 37 standard model wood frame 1-story hip roof houses with front porches, currently located on Dunsmuir, Penrith, Maryport, and Windermere Avenues. The houses were built as company homes for mine workers in nearby Bevan in 1910 to 1912 and were relocated to Cumberland in 1918. They've been occupied as residential homes since this time in the community. 2719 Dunsmuir Avenue is the Cumberland Drug Store, a 2-story stucco-clad commercial building with a prominent cornice. The building has residential units above and at the rear and is located on the south side of Dunsmuir Avenue in downtown Cumberland, BC. And lastly, the Wellington Colliery Railway is a former triangular-shaped railway line that connects Union Bay, Royston, Cumberland, and Bevan, that transferred both passengers as well as coal through mines 1 and 8 to Union Bay for transshipment. Surviving evidence of this line exists in unbuilt open areas on all 4 sides of the Village of Cumberland, as well as areas outside of Cumberland's boundaries. So since the establishment of the Cumberland Community Heritage Register in October 2017, 1 to 4 sites have been added to the register each year by resolution of council. As part of its annual work plan, the Heritage Committee proposes sites for addition to the register. These sites are selected by the committee using a values-based methodology that reflects the overall significance of a place to the community or to the region. Once selected, each site is documented with a statement of significance that describes the historic, social, and cultural values of the site. Although already recognized on Cumberland's Heritage Register in 2017, the Statement of Significance for Coal Creek Historic Park was recently updated by Alana Zeisplat, their heritage consultant hired by the village. The updates were to include more recent initiatives to conserve historic infrastructure and to restore the natural habitat of the area. Furthermore, the updated statement acknowledges the traditional use of the area for hunting and fishing by the Comox First Nation and includes the addition of new character-defining elements. In addition to this update of the statement, Alana also worked with the committee to write a survey, as I mentioned, a statement for the survey benchmark, Bevan Houses, 2719 Dunsmuir, and the Wellington Colliery Railway. These final draft statements, which are attached to the report, were presented to the Heritage Committee on March 21st, 2024, and it is their recommendation that Council accept them to be added to the Community Heritage Register. Now, in addition to adding the 00 survey benchmark to the Heritage Register, previous Councillor Sproul previously shared a vision of marking the monument with interpretive signage. Through signage, it is Sproul's vision that the monument can be more easily found in the future, and the important role the survey mark contributes to Cumberland's character recognized. So there is possibility of future interpretive signage marking the location, which is to be explored further by the Development Services and Parks and Recreation departments. The opportunity for this exists in the upcoming Village Park Master Plan process, which is currently scheduled to be initiated in 2025. And so really, the heritage values of a community are communicated through its continued presence, use, and understanding of its historic places. By adding sites to the community register, the village has an official record that contributes to the conservation and makes it possible to identify the importance and significance of heritage sites for past, future, and present generations. Furthermore, recognition on the Community Heritage Register may also serve as a starting point for a conversation between the village and property owners for further protection of the heritage values.
Thanks, Eric. Questions? Go ahead.
Yes, thanks for that. These all look great. I guess my question is, does this imply any obligations or on the current owners? I'm thinking specifically of the Bevan houses and the, I guess it's the B-side building now.
Yeah, no.
On Dunsmuir. Does this?
There's no certain expectations from the owners. If they are accepted as on the register, we'll notify them and also provide them a copy of the statement of significance.
Okay.
But it's more of an acknowledgement that their home is of value to the community, but there's no expectation from them as an owner.
Okay, thank you.
And I just sitting on the committee, one of the ideas there, it's more of a carrot than a stick. I know a lot of people are nervous about, oh gosh, my house or my building, commercial buildings on the heritage registry, I have to paint it a certain color or anything like that. The idea is it develops a sense of pride in the history of the community more than it does as a punitive measure to make sure your house is a brave taupe or whatever color they want to put it. I'd also like to just acknowledge former Councillor Spruill there for all her work in getting that 0 survey mark. And if you don't know where it is, it's behind the hidden in the bushes behind the jump park there, the bike jump park. You go around the backside, and I think it would be nice in the future to have some kind of cairn or a bit more of a prominent marker, because it really does
It's really a
represent.
little puck right now.
Yeah, and if you're a mapping buff at all, it doesn't tie into any of our current mapping systems or any recognized ones. This was a mining specific mapping system, which then had to be translated over to UTM coordinates so that you could find it in the real world. So it's a real neat, significant spot for us, and I really like that she went through all the effort to tromp through the bushes for that. So.
Among other things, like railroads and
Oh
stuff. Yeah, thank you for this. First of all, I wanted to appreciate both the climate implications comments in this report, which I think is valuable because the least carbon emitting building is the one that's currently standing and not demolished. And also the addition of Indigenous history in the parks is awesome. And I guess does the registry go on the title of the house? So when someone buys a home, how would they know if it's on the registry or not?
I don't believe it does go on the title.
Yeah.
No, yeah. It's basically the Heritage Registry exists as almost an asset of the communities.
Yeah.
But then if it is registered on the registry, it does get acknowledged on the provincial registry as well.
Yeah.
So if these statements are accepted, then we will actually file them with the BC Heritage Branch as well. But it's not something that's registered on title.
Yeah. Thanks.
And just to add that last year, as the year before, we did a real good refresh on our heritage webpage, and it's a lot easier to find the list of properties on the Community Heritage Register. So that was one of the reasons we did that, so people who have a property or are looking to buy a property can sort of find out for themselves if it's on the register.
Okay. So we'd have to develop a mechanism to add that, like we can't just add it to the title, or I don't know how we would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's up to people who live in the houses. So, but the existing resident gets a notice or gets
Yeah,
and
we'll
the
notify
SOS
them
and all
with
that.
a letter.
Okay.
And also give them a copy of the statement.
So that could be passed on by resident to resident or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Kettler, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think they're all worthy additions to the Heritage Register, and I wanted to thank staff and the consultant, and in particular the committee, the Heritage Committee, for all their work. I was wondering, as far as the 00 survey benchmark Do you need any direction from council to move forward with additional signage or?
I don't believe there needs to be a council resolution for the signage. It was more something that did come up in previous conversations, and it's something that staff wanted to acknowledge, that we recognize Sproul's contributions there. So it's something that we'd like to incorporate into the master plan for the village park.
Okay, and does that go back to the Heritage Committee around their input for signage, or?
It's certainly something we could do, is incorporate the committee in that process.
That'd be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just would like to see some signage too. I think most
Yeah.
people have never heard of it or understand the concept, and
Yeah.
some comprehensive signage would be pretty neat for sure.
Yeah, totally. A signboard or something. So can somebody make a note of that so we remember to do that in the parks?
Are you talking about the 00 monument?
Yes,
Jen?
yes.
I think you should make a motion to direct it, this to be sent to the master plan, then if it's that.
Oh, then that's how we'll track it.
That's
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Do we need to say it?
Oh, sorry.
Do we need to say it, Rachel? Motion to
That council direct that heritage recognition sign be included in the village park master plan?
yeah
For the
zero
00
zero
marker.
marker.
I can do it if you want.
He'll remember.
And
that the interpretation of the 00
Thank you.
be considered in the village park.
That's what we need. That's what Jesse said, and Councillor Sullivan seconded.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Go with
I don't know
that.
if I don't know if considered was the word we were using.
Oh, okay.
Sounds a little wishy-washy.
and also that it go back to the Heritage Committee for input? Yeah, thanks.
Okay, all in favor?
Second.
Thank you.
We're just making it up as
Thank
we
you,
go
Eric.
Yeah, no worries.
Making it up as we go along. It's all good.
Okay, and there is a recommendation there as well, on top of the motion that we made. So we need that as well.
I move the council receive the updated statement of significance for the Coal Creek Historic Park site in the Community Heritage Register, and that 00 survey benchmark Bevan Houses 2719 Dunsmuir Avenue and Wellington Colliery Railway, each documented with a statement of significance to the Community Heritage Register, and that staff be authorized to submit all the required documentation to the BC Heritage Branch.
Second.
All in favor? And there you go. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, next up is United Riders of Cumberland Association. United Riders of Cumberland, are they actually an association? Okay, Community Service Partnership Agreement. Hello, Kevin.
Good evening. Yeah, I suppose that's their official name, because
Yeah.
as a society.
Like on the society.
So in these legal documents, it's UROC A, I guess?
Yeah,
So-
Uraka.
UROCA. Okay. So this is the fourth of the community service agreements that will now have been brought forward to you folks. And this is for the delivery of a trail service by UROC. Now, it was interesting in discussions with their board. It's a subtle difference in the from the previous agreement, which ended at the end of last year. But they also want to highlight the other important contributions to the community that they make in addition to the trail service, being some of their programming and events to the well-being of the community. From a cultural and community health perspectives. This would be things like partnerships they have with the Community School Society, working with youth on after-school ride programs, or the special events that they deliver. So yeah, as I mentioned, the previous community service agreement ended last year. This is also proposed for 4 years to 2027. At funding that is to increase slightly each year as funded by council's financial plan. And the biggest difference between this and previous ones is essentially this attempts to combine what were two previous agreements or contracts in which the village worked with UROC on. So one is this broader community service partnership agreement where they're delivering a trail service largely on private lands of which the village doesn't have any direct role in the management of those trails. That's through a license agreement between UROC and private forestry companies. And then the delivery of the previously contracted service of maintaining village trails, of which we have ultimate management authority. And so those are the trails that are in the Cumberland Community Forest Park and the village forest lands that we own surrounding our reservoirs higher up in the Perseverance watershed. So the agreement attempts to combine those, but still enable the village to maintain that ultimate authority over the prioritization and management of those trails. But recognize that on the ground, it's a little bit tricky because many trails cross property lines. And so achieving a common standard of trail maintenance can be a little bit hard when there's differing funding strategies and how to do so. So it attempts to ensure that over the course of the 4 years, we get full value for those tax dollars, but enable a little bit of flexibility within that over time. So it's attempt at something a little bit different and new to try and achieve some efficiencies and just improvements in how the trail system is managed holistically across property boundaries and parks versus private lands. And so the reporting mechanisms will largely stay the same. We receive very good and detailed reports of where they've worked and when, and we also have the ability to prioritize that work. But I think, yeah, this could be a more efficient way of accomplishing the same thing to our mutual benefit. And then otherwise, yeah, I think the only other addition to highlight would just be to continue the practice that we've already started about them appearing as a delegation annually to provide an update on what they're doing and just enable that relationship between their board and council to continue to be maintained and fostered. So that's, the summary.
Thank you very much. Questions? Anybody? Councillor Kettler?
Thanks. Yeah, that's great. You know, UROC A is a valued partner, and it's good that they highlighted all the additional services that they do provide. There was just one, I guess it was a typo or not, I'm not sure. So on page 160 of the agreement, of the agenda, so page 4 of 13 of the agreement, under insurance, it says $5 million, and then in brackets 3 million. So I'm just wondering which one it is for the general liability, 5 million or 3 million.
That's definitely a typo. I believe UROC is actually carrying $10 million these days. I would have to double check. I don't think that is going to be a hindrance in any way to this agreement, so I can check with them. I think 5 million is probably appropriate here.
Yeah.
You would just, cross out 3.
Okay.
Thanks, Councillor. I also had that highlighted. Yeah, I mean, I think this is worth a try, combining it so that it's a little more flexible. I really appreciate the annual delegation. I think that really helps. We have a really good working relationship, and that just understanding what they're doing and the plans and the strategy and stuff is really helpful. And also their communication with staff that allows us to get in our weekly reader any major events or upgrades or whatever work, so we're aware of what's going on. And there's nothing worse than being out on the street and somebody going, "Hey, did you know blah blah blah?" And I'm like, "No, I had no idea." So that communication has been really great as well. Understanding what they're doing out there and how many people we're expecting and all that good stuff. So thanks for your work on this, and it looks like a good agreement. There's a recommendation there.
I'll recommend that council approve the 2024-2027 Community Service Partnership Agreement between the Village of Cumberland and the United Writers of Cumberland Association, and that council authorize the Chief Administrative Officer and Mayor to execute the agreement.
Second.
All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And now we're doing a community service strategic projects reprioritization proposal. That's you again.
Yeah, and there's actually, it's a good segue between the trails conversation we've just had and the delegation from the Sid Williams Society. There's been an opportunity since I've returned from leave to evaluate the projects and where we were at and which ones to, really start sinking my teeth into. And the realization came that one, in hindsight, some of the shortcomings of how we first attempted to complete a recreation, arts, and culture plan, and the revised approach that is now essentially, we're working to implement in the strategic priorities. Like your Cascade document really was to break things apart and complete that arts and culture service review next year. And then focus that recreation, arts, and culture master planning process more on the facility sides of things, which flows out of the properties and facilities review and the need for that long-range facility planning or renewal strategy. And so in realizing the realistic timeline for the need for that type of facility plan is not immediate. In that the work that we're doing to look at the broad facility plan is still, I wouldn't say in its early days, there's a lot of work being done, but it's several steps removed from where we're at right now when we would actually look at major recreation and cultural facility renewal. While meanwhile, in my work with groups like UROC and the Community Forest Society, there seemingly is a more urgent might be too strong of a word, but definitely an appetite for a community forest management plan to be done sooner. And so recognizing there's an opportunity to potentially basically switch where these are at in the list of priorities, wanted to put that forward to council, just recognizing the benefits of having a community forest park management plan now that could address a multitude of issues, including trails and adjacency to the network UROC manages, as well as things like conservation and restoration focused projects, future acquisitions. It could consider a lot, and there's potentially a grant opportunity that could support some of that, which we would look at in a little bit more depth should council want to pursue this kind of change in approach. So at the end of the term, the goal would still be to have completed the same projects. It's just shuffling the priority in which we would look to tackle them.
Okay, questions? Go ahead, Councillor Tiernan.
I guess my only concern with this is that part of a renewal of our facilities would possibly present an opportunity to tack on affordable housing or a housing component to those facilities. And as we saw from our last, the previous report, that's much needed. So pushing those back, I understand the reasoning behind all of this, but just pushing that all back means pushing back that opportunity, and I'm a bit just a little worried that that is our priority. Now, having said that, I understand that it still may not happen quickly because of just all the other pieces that need to fall in place before that. So, but yeah, again, it seems like that these kinds of things just take way too much time.
Michelle, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think Councillor Therrien said what I was about to say, is that, ideally we'd do everything all at
once.
But the reality is, I think the arts and culture master plan that's to be done next year will really feed well into the facility rather than the other way around. That's one of my thoughts. And the other thought is we still have a lot of work that we're doing with the public works yard, which has to be built before we can even think about what we want to do with this. So the reality is it's unfortunate, but yeah.
And we still have other lands and other opportunities to get affordable housing. We will continue to work on that. even though we're very sad about it all. Anybody else? Questions? Yeah, I mean, just to recognize for our arts and culture community that we do think that they are a critical piece of our community, and we do value the work they do and what they bring to the community. And that's partly why we want to make sure that we build in a review of the service and make sure that we're doing that in the best way, and that feeds into the facility study. So this does make sense, even though it's a bit of it's another wait. This is the way we make the best use of time and get the best decisions. So as hard as it is, it's good. So there's a recommendation there.
I move the council direct staff to initiate the Cumberland Community Forest Park Management Planning process in spring 2024 and report back to council with a proposed project scope and financial plan budget amendment, and that council direct staff to defer the Recreation and Culture Center facility planning project to 2026.
Seconder? Second. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. It is, that management plan is definitely needed there. It just is, it's crazy out there.
We could have done all of these yesterday, would have been the best, right?
If you guys just never slept, you know? That,
Well, I don't.
you
actually,
don't,
but-
yeah, you probably don't, so.
It's not because of this,
For
though.
other reasons, yeah.
Sorry, but.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that. Okay, so now, council member monthly reports. Any questions on those?
I got mine in late. Can I just do a quick verbal?
We had this conversation last time, and if there's something really urgent, then you want to put it in a report and give it to council so that we can read it in advance of the meeting, and then we can ask you questions.
Gotcha.
Go ahead, Councillor Barecki.
Nothing terribly urgent. Just one.
Okay,
little-
then no. We don't.
Perfect. There we go. The Heritage Committee work plan will be submitted by July. Thank you.
Excellent. Good work on the Heritage Committee.
In there.
Yeah, any questions on anything? If not, there's
I've got just
Yes.
one.
Yes.
How did speaking of affordable housing, how did the rent event go just after we got back from AVICC?
It was good, and I did not spend a lot of time there.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it was just after AVICC.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But it was a good gather. I mean, yeah, it's networking at its most extreme. Yeah.
Can I ask about the junction that the coalition report was on? So John Howard Society is stepping down, and what was the talk about that at the meeting? Does it seem like there'll be another nonprofit stepping up?
It seems to be taking some time for that to happen. So I don't know the latest. The last coalition meeting, well, the next one is June 5th, but it's strategic planning, so I think the RFP is out.
All right,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay, so there's a recommendation there. If there's no more questions,
Move receipt.
Second.
all in favor? And that is carried. 2024 property tax rate bylaws. Third reading, right? Adoption, sorry.
Adoption.
Adoption. So somebody can, we've
The
seen.
council adopt the 2024 property tax rates bylaw number 1209/2024.
Second.
All in favor? Excellent, thank you. And community nuisance abatement bylaw and bylaw compliance policy. Yay.
Good evening.
We just are so excited about this, thank
Okay.
you.
Great. Well, we have been working hard to refine a community nuisance abatement bylaw that aims to provide the village with tools to cope with the worst nuisance properties without burdening taxpayers with the cost of enforcement, and in a way that respects Cumberland's unique and relaxed community character. So this evening we're bringing this nuisance bylaw to you alongside a new bylaw compliance policy. We know Council wants to ensure that bylaw staff are spending their time on the most serious offenses and on priority issues for the community. And the new policy will help guide staff in prioritizing calls for service in a way that's aligned with Council direction. The new policy represents a shift in the approach to bylaw compliance in the village. It is grounded in trauma-informed principles intended to foster a culture of respect, inclusion, collaboration, and leadership, guiding compliance and enforcement activities with sensitivity, understanding, and effective community engagement and communication. So a municipality is not required by law to enforce any of its bylaws. Most municipalities certainly do, and prioritizing the issues with the limited resources is a perennial issue. There's a limit to staff time in even the largest of municipalities, so this challenge of prioritization is not unique to Cumberland. So the bylaw compliance policy has this image of a pyramid. It uses a pyramid approach to prioritize, categorize bylaw compliance issues into 3 different areas. The first and the highest priority is immediate threats to public safety or the environment. Priority 2 is council initiatives and strategic priorities. So for example, right now that would be something like vacation rentals. And category 3 is everything else, discretionary enforcement. A response from the bylaw department is generally, there's generally an investigation in response to a complaint, or what we're now, it's kind of more best practice to call these as a call for service rather than a complaint. We need the services of the bylaw department to check this out and follow up and get things on the right track. That's the kind of terminology that's being used more these days. So once a call for service is received, deciding whether or not to, the bylaw officer would get some information and make sure they have all the information, then making a decision on what to do next. Or to exercise discretion to not take any further steps on a complaint or on a call for service or an issue. So this policy provides quite a list of criteria to help staff make a decision on the what to do next. So for example, staff would have to figure out, assess the scale, nature, and duration of the contravention, the amount of time that has lapsed since the contravention occurred, the impact of the contravention on the community, the resources available to resolve the matter, the costs associated with enforcement action, the probability of a successful outcome, the policy implications of the enforcement action and the potential for precedents, whether public safety is at risk, and whether enforcement might be a deterrent for future cases. So all of these things are taken into account on what deciding to do next, and the policy, this new policy, lays these out in a way that we didn't have before to help make these decisions. And I will mention as well that there is even a more detailed standard operating procedure that's developed internally to guide the day-to-day decision-making in the bylaw department. That flows out from this policy. It's brand new as well. So we had a question that came in prior to the council meeting about this use of discretion. The question is, will the use of discretion to not enforce a bylaw be consistently applied in all similar complaints? So the answer is yes. Following this policy should result in consistent responses, but with a caveat that no 2 complaints are identical. So I think you can imagine from that long list of criteria used to assess what to do next, that every complaint is unique. What we don't want to see is valuable time being spent on low priority complaints. So we do want that consistency. We want people to feel that things are fair and consistent, recognizing that everything's unique. We also had a comment come in before the council meeting that dogs off leash appears to be particularly problematic right now. And I'd say that we're aware of this and we're looking to spend time on public education with the bylaw officer out reminding people of the rules, but also that aggressive and biting dog violations, those are priority number 1. And so the last thing on the new policy is that it also emphasizes education, which it leads into that dogs off leash concern. And it's my expectation that through redirection of enforcement effort to highest priority issues, as well as a streamlined complaint and tracking process, which we're also working on, there'll be more time available for community outreach and education, which is really consistent with the policy that emphasizes that, that communication with the community. So that's the bylaw compliance policy. Now, the nuisance bylaw, the community nuisance and abatement bylaw. Okay, so council previously gave first reading to a different bylaw called the Good Neighbor bylaw, which was never adopted. This bylaw is now renamed and refreshed to respond to council's specific concerns about the previous bylaw, and there's an itemized list in the staff report that talks about the direction that council previously gave on changes council wanted to see and what we have done in this new bylaw to make those changes. The Community Nuisance Abatement Bylaw offers several effective methods to deter nuisance situations, to encourage voluntary compliance, and to enforce the bylaw, and these that are new, not possible with our current bylaws. So two things that this new bylaw can do. There are the possibility of, let me start again. The first category is excessive nuisance service calls and fees. So when the RCMP or village staff have responded on site in relation to nuisances more than once in a 24-hour period or more than 3 times in a year, 12-month period, this tool will allow the village staff to impose service fees to the property owner for any further service calls within that 1 year. And it's important to note that these fees are not applied unless this threshold for complaints and calls has been reached. So there is there shouldn't be any concern that a one-off complaint would result in fees being applied to a particular property. There has to be a pattern of complaints or calls or attending the property. The second category in this bylaw is compliance orders and abatement fees. So the bylaw also authorizes staff to issue compliance orders where a property owner or occupier refuses to comply with initial enforcement. Compliance orders must include a specified and reasonable time for compliance. If the conditions of a compliance order are not met, the bylaw authorizes the village to take action to bring about compliance and impose abatement fees on the property owner or occupier for work done or services provided to the land or improvements. And if either the first category of excessive nuisance call fees or the second category of abatement fees, if either fees remain unpaid after the village issues a demand for payment, the municipality can recover the amounts in default in the same manner as recovering or collecting property taxes. And if unpaid by the end of the year, these fees are deemed to be taxes in arrears, similar to how the village currently collects outstanding utility fees and would then accumulate interest. So this is a tool that is expected to be have much more success and recover costs to the village for the very small percentage of the most extreme nuisance cases. And we had a question about these costs come in before the council meeting. It was about how will these costs be known that might be in arrears? How will they be known when legal transactions are being conducted? Not even in arrears, just owing on the property. For example, the question is, how would notaries and lawyers find out if costs are owed, if there's a real estate transaction happening? Will the information be on a tax certificate or other types of certificate? So I can tell you that we're currently researching best practices and seeking legal advice to create our internal process to ensure that this notification is happening. I don't have a specific answer for council or the member of the public tonight. So in summary, the Community Nuisance and Abatement Bylaw will give the village new tools to address the most serious nuisance properties and more effectively recover costs for the village. And the new bylaw compliance policy represents a shift in approach to a more collaborative and educational approach to the vast majority of enforcement. And there are 3 recommendations at the top of the staff report.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all your work on all of this. It's just awesome. Questions?
Just a comment. I really was impressed with this new policy, and I appreciate the work that staff have put into this. I think people will find it less random that they're being targeted for something, and it really provides a nice structure to provide voluntary compliance, which is what we want in the end. We don't want these massive punitive measures against someone who's maybe left their garbage accidentally out overnight or something like that. You know, I think it's a much better approach to this, and will apply comfortably to the vast majority of the members of our community. So thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, thanks for all your work. I'm glad to see the new direction, and I like the idea of the standard operating procedure. So I was just wondering what timeline we have for the internal creation of those SOPs.
So that's almost complete, actually. We just need to clarify some procedural steps about how we're receiving complaints, which we're actually putting in a bit of a new procedure, and it's really ready to go.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Awesome. Good news. Thanks. Yep.
Fantastic. So there's a recommendation. There's 3 recommendations there.
I recommend that council rescind first reading and cancel Good Neighbor Bylaw number 1168, 2022, and that council give first and second reading to Community Nuisance Abatement Bylaw number 1210, 2024. And finally, that council rescind policy 9.1 bylaw enforcement policy adopted on November 13th, 2012, and adopt new policy 9.1 bylaw compliance policy.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you.
Phase 1 Parks and Recreation Fees Bylaw Update. Let's go. They're both coming. Ryan and Kevin. Excellent.
Good evening, everybody. So yeah, we are proposing this Phase 1 Recreation Fees Bylaw, Parks and Recreation Fees Bylaw update. So of course, recreation is funded through a combination of user fees and taxation. Basically, the purpose of this update is to really catch up the village's fees to the rising cost of delivering recreation services while remaining fair to taxpayers. So we're increasing the fees to keep up with the expenses rather than taxes. So roughly what you'll see as sort of a base is about a 7% increase year over year. And where that came from is basically our 2018 expenses to our 2023 expenses. Was just over 22%. The increase was just over 22%. So we've taken that as the initial 2024 step up, and then we've got just a 3% sort of CPI increase for the 4 years after that. And the main reason for that is so that we continue to keep up with those fees, and there's not a, 5 years down the line, there's not another large fee. So then rather than jump them up 22% right off the bat, we just evened it out 7% across the board. Now there are some discrepancies in there, but that's sort of the main basis of it. So yeah, we also looked at, in the process of this, we looked at the fees that other neighboring municipalities are charging, just to, make sure that we're all in line. And staff at least is confident that we're in the right ballpark. So for comparison, in Courtney, looking at an adult single admission, in Courtney, Comox, and the CVRD at their recreation facilities, you're looking at $650, $685, and $625 respectively. Under this new proposal, in 2024, ours would be $430, so still cheaper than all the rest. Some of the significant changes in the bylaw. So the other thing we've done is we've proposed a few new fees just to catch instances where we don't really have a fee in the current bylaw that makes sense. So one of them you'll notice is the commercial non-exclusive fee. And this is essentially it's a fee for commercial operators who don't necessarily require exclusive use of a fee, as the name would apply. And so, they can still make sure that they have a spot. We don't necessarily have to reserve the whole park or area of the park. If another booking comes up, they can move somewhere else. We've got a fee for recreation equipment. We've had some requests. For example, a community group approached us a couple years ago. They wanted to run a spin class, and they're wondering if they could use our spin bikes. We've had people that want to use the gymnasium and use Nerf battle equipment. There's a group from the school division that runs a youth fitness class and uses fitness equipment. So it'd be nice to be able to recoup some of those costs, the wear and tear, that kind of thing. The staff and council discount, this is, it's one that was enacted by council policy. We're attempting to formally put it in the fees bylaw. There is a proposed fee for nonprofit use of Village Square. Currently, there's only a private and commercial fee, so that's new in this one. A few other new fees, Buchanan Hall Kitchen, we've now got it certified by Island Health for renting out, so we've added a fee for that. There's a per day fee for late key returns for when user groups rent keys. We're having some challenges getting those keys returned in a timely manner. So that's an incentive to get those back in a timely fashion. There is also a proposed fee for street closures. Currently, there is no fee. And this is just to recognize the staff time that goes into them. So we've got one fee for closures that are on bus routes. They require a little bit more work, reaching out to transit and that kind of thing. Another fee for streets off of bus routes. And again, that's to kind of encourage people to use these side streets. They tend to be less disruptive to the community as well. And then there's an additional fee for a one-time fee for these new street closure applications that need to go to council, because that obviously requires the writing of a report and presentation and all that kind of fun stuff. There are a few exemptions that were in the 2019 bylaw, which is last time this was updated. And this current update has been proposed based on the staff recommendations, which are basically the Remembrance Day services held by the Cumberland Legion. They typically reserve the Cumberland Gymnasium as a backup space in case they need it. It's not often used, but we propose keeping it in there. Santa's breakfast held by the Cumberland Community School Society is listed in the last bylaw. We've reached out to CCSS. They've told us they have no intention of bringing back Santa's breakfast, so we recommend removing that from the bylaw.
That's so sad.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now I feel sad. I mean, you can feel free to make changes that you want to see.
We can't force them to do it.
He's still real. You know that.
Still real Santa who came.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The 2019 bylaw, the current bylaw, has an exemption for educational programs held by SD 71 under a joint use facility agreement. We currently have one such program that I alluded to before. We recommend that exemption is maintained because we like working with the school division, and well, we like working with a lot of partners, but this one I think makes sense to keep. And we're also recommending that we exempt that recreation equipment fee that we've proposed, and that would enable this youth fitness program to continue running. And yeah, we think it's a good program. There is a table towards the bottom of the report estimating some financial implications. So yeah, the gist is for 2024, because we're mostly through the year, we anticipate the additional revenue brought in would be modest. $2,500 is what I've kind of estimated. Maybe a better thing to look at would be 2025, the first full year that this would take effect, in which case we're estimating just under $16,000 in additional revenue, and then you can see that spelled or extrapolated through 2028. Yeah, maybe I'll leave it at that. There's a lot in there, but I'll open up there for questions.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Councillor Kettler.
Thanks. Good report. Thank you.
Sorry, Kevin has reminded me just to remind that the intention of this is a phase 1 update to kind of take care of some immediate concerns and address the immediate concerns. There are, excuse me, several larger initiatives that we would like to look into, but they're going to take they're going to take some more time, and we're not quite there yet. So our idea is sometime in 2025 to come forward with some phase 2 updates. Thank you.
Thanks. So my question was, with the events exemptions, was there any that were given previously that we're now taking away that weren't listed in the report? Like, are we going to have any community groups coming to us and saying, hey, you know?
No, the only ones that that were listed in the bylaw I've mentioned here.
Mentioned them. Okay, great.
The ones that were taken away anyways. There's also an exemption currently for park. There's something about park permit fees.
For the school district.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we.
And CCSS, yeah.
That's right. We just recommended that that stays in there. It could be explored during phase 2, of course. But yeah, not proposing taking it out at this point.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
I like the changes.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
One, is this going to, how many people pay with cash when they go in for a visit, and with all these $4.30 and $5.15 amounts, is this going to cause trouble?
Chaos.
Or are most of the payments with card and?
Yes.
Yeah, we've actually had quite a few conversations about this. I mean, most people now pay via their membership card or some other kind of payment card. There are obviously still people that pay cash. A lot of it is, youths that come after school for drop-in. They come with their toonie and they drop it in. So yeah, there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve getting used to that. Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to look at, raising everything by $1. Like, that starts getting a little bit uneven. All of the other local municipalities or jurisdictions, they have their fees rounded to the nearest nickel. I look back, and before 2019, the current bylaw, our fees were rounded to the nickel. So I'm hoping that that we can adjust.
Do we still have nickels? I'm pretty sure we do.
I think I've seen them, yeah.
I haven't seen one recently, but I'm pretty sure they're still up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I had a question. So for the street closure fees, when you look at something like, something like May Day, celebrations coming up and that, will you be charging for each street close, or the parade's coming down the main street, or the soapbox derby takes up one? Will that be cumulative for each actual event that you do, or can we exempt May Day from something like that? Like, I can see something like maybe Stoke Fest, which I'm stoked about. That would be something. But if we have a larger community event, or for Halloween, is that going to be included in the street closure fee? Because I kind of have some reservations about that.
Yeah. Sorry, did you say Halloween there at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Halloween is our event,
ours,
so that wouldn't be the fee
How
wouldn't
about-
apply to that.
How about the parades? And is that?
Yeah. Do you?
So sorry to clarify, is the question, is it per street
Per
or
street?
per application? Is that the
Yeah,
question?
yeah. But is it per street, or can we still exempt some things like the soapbox derby, for example? That doesn't bring a whole lot of money in. It's just for kids. I don't see, chiseling people $100 just to close off the street there for something
I
like
would
it.
look at, we receive one special event application for the Victoria Day weekend events.
Yeah.
Of which the street closure would be considered under one application.
Okay,
So it would be
that's-
for Dunsmuir, for second, I guess, for first for the parade.
Okay,
so
yeah,
that would
that-
be one. And there is a cost to administering all of this. It's a bit of a slippery slope once we start with council approved exemptions, because I think there's many community groups who could make a fairly strong case that their event offers something unique to the village. So we try and set the fees to be reasonable, but at least offsetting some of the costs, so it's not entirely subsidized by taxes.
Okay.
It's not up to council to make sure that the event is making enough money to pay for our fees. It's up to us to look after our staff and make sure that we're paying them appropriately for the work they have to do. So if we're approving event applications, that takes staff time. We need to recoup that cost. That's all.
Well, I agree. I
That's
just
what it's
want to make sure that some things which aren't really money-making events, and there's not really vendors and things like that
Again,
involved.
it's not about money making. It's about the staff allocation to do the work. It's not our responsibility to decide whether an event is going to make money or not. That's not our purview.
Sounds like they're
Right.
not going to charge you for the soapbox. So.
Oh, my main question was whether that was all under one application,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
were you to have something like that, would we be able to maybe consider waiving these fees? I really,
I think that's exactly what we're trying to get away from,
yeah,
is because that's
I-
what was done in the past.
yeah.
And
There's-
it's
there's-
important for us to manage the finances of the village of Cumberland so that we're not subsidizing events that have nothing to do with us, or that are put on for the benefit of the community, but they're not village-led events. Right?
Fair enough. I'm
Questionable.
really, I don't feel comfortable with that. I'll just put that out there right now.
Okay, so there's a recommendation there.
I'll move that council give first, second, and third reading to Parks and Recreation Fees Bylaw number 1211, 2024, and that council direct staff to work on a Phase 2 update to the Parks and Recreation Fees Bylaw to consider the strategic bylaw amendments proposed in the Phase 1 Parks and Recreation Fees Update report, including additional environmental and/or community infrastructure fees for major outdoor events, educational use of parks and facilities, event surcharges to support reconciliation initiatives, fees and conditions for mobile vendors, and a refund policy for programs and events.
Second.
Thank you. I have a question, sorry, that I didn't catch because it was down on the bottom of the page. For the Phase 2 thing, so when we initially talked about it, we talked about the number of consecutive events and how we're scheduling events and stuff like that. Is that also included in the scope of the Phase 2?
That is hopefully going to be addressed in the events policy that I'm currently working on drafting.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Carry on, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, thank you for
Thank you.
that. And notices, motions, and announcements. So please do check the website prior to attending any of the things I'm gonna talk about to make sure that they are actually happening at the time, because things change. So wastewater upgrades, AAP open office. So anyone who has questions about the AAP process or the wastewater project, there is an open house on May 14th from 8:30 to 10:30 a.m. And you can also send questions at any time to info@cumberland.ca or reach out to any councillor member for more information about the AAP or the wastewater upgrade. OCP engagement events also on May 22nd and 23rd from 1 till 7 in council chambers. So we'll see you all there.
I think it says 2 on the website.
Yeah. 2 to 7? 2 o'clock to 7. Again, always check the website before you come down to make sure it's the right time and somebody hasn't given you bad information like me. And questions? There's nobody here.
Courtney seemed to head a lot of them off at the pass there.
She did. She got a few out
Nice one,
there.
Courtney.
Yeah.
I was actually going to remind council that just in case members wanted to add any comments to those or add anything to those questions, I was going to read those out again,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Sure.
If the enforcement of bylaw, with the enforcement of bylaws policy where it states that enforcement is discretionary, for the majority of our bylaws, will the use of discretion to not enforce a bylaw be consistently applied in all similar complaints?
Yes.
And where there are costs applied, will this information be on the tax certificate when legal transactions are conducted?
So that we're trying to figure out. But the whole reason for the policy coming forward is so that we are applying discretion and bylaws equitably across every complaint. So that is exactly what it's there for.
And there are no other questions.
Okay, so we're moving into closed if somebody wants to move that recommendation.
Or you got it in front of you. I didn't.
I'll move the council close the meeting to the public pursuant to Section 90 of the Community Charter to consider labor relations or other employee relations, law enforcement, if the council considers that disclosure could be reasonably expected to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement of an enactment or litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.